Let's just jump right into it. When you look at a modern metropolis, it's incredibly easy to get completely overwhelmed by the sheer scale of what's going on. I mean, from climate change driving extreme weather to massive traffic grids literally paralyzing our daily commutes, modern cities throw some incredibly tangled puzzles at us. So how do we actually teach the next generation of planners and scientists to solve the seemingly impossible? Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to uncover the secret to structuring the unsolvable.
To figure out how we fix our cities, we first have to wrap our heads around something called ill-structured problems, or, as researchers like to call them, wicked problems. You know, these are issues that are so incredibly tangled that trying to solve them is basically like being a detective walking into a crime scene where there's no actual crime scene. They are authentic, multidisciplinary, and wildly complex. And here's the real kicker. There is absolutely no single correct solution, no magic bullet. Instead, you're just left with better or worse solutions, and whether they work or not is judged entirely by the subjective opinions of the different stakeholders. So, what works beautifully for a downtown business owner might be a total disaster for a suburban commuter. Navigating that tension? Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at tackling wicked urban problems, the urban science shift, why structuring is hard, the DIMES methodology, DIMES in action focusing on heat waves, and finally, AI and future cities. Let's get into it.
Starting with Section 1, Tackling Wicked Urban Problems.
You see, today's cities aren't just static collections of concrete and steel anymore. They are dynamic, completely open, and incredibly volatile environments, driven by all these competing social and technical factors. Researchers actually use an acronym for this environment, VUCA. That stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Just think about it for a second. Think about how a sudden update to a rideshare app can completely upend city traffic patterns literally overnight, or how a rapid shift to remote work can alter the entire economic landscape of a massive downtown district in just a matter of months. You really can't look at a city as just a bunch of buildings anymore. You have to treat it like a living, breathing ecosystem where rapid tech deployment and constantly shifting human behavior are always colliding.
Moving on to Section 2, the urban science shift.
Because cities have changed so much, our whole approach has had to evolve. We're actually in the middle of a massive shift from traditional urban planning, which historically focused pretty heavily on physical space, infrastructure, and human settlement, to a brand new field called urban science. In urban science, it's a highly computational approach. It treats cities as complex adaptive systems. Researchers actually call this the fourth paradigm of science. And what that really means for us is we are no longer just relying on physical observation or, simple theoretical models. We're moving toward massive, data-intensive computational discovery. We aren't just drawing maps of streets with a pen and paper anymore. We're mining massive, real-time datasets to uncover the hidden, totally unpredictable behaviors of the entire city all at once.
Which brings us to Section 3, why structuring is hard.
So, teaching students how to properly structure or really define problems in this crazy new data-heavy paradigm is, well, it's really hard. Instructors basically face three major hurdles. First off, urban problems are highly transdisciplinary. Students can't just memorize zoning laws, they have to integrate design, engineering, system science, and social sciences all at the exact same time. Second, they are intensely data-driven. That requires a really high level of advanced technical literacy just to navigate those massive datasets we were talking about. And third, and honestly this might be the most important one, they are techno-humanistic. That means students have to constantly balance rolling out new technology with real social ethics. They are dealing with heavy real-world dilemmas like algorithmic justice, data privacy, and digital equity. If a student doesn't deeply understand the socio-political context of the community they're actually trying to help, they can easily fall into the trap of solutionism. And that's basically just throwing a shiny piece of technology at a problem without understanding the real human impact.
All right, Section 4, the DIMES methodology.
To help students actually navigate all of this extreme complexity, researchers developed a highly specialized analytical toolkit for higher education. They call it the DIMES methodology. DIMES is an active, problem-based learning method broken down into 5 distinct iterative steps: describe, inquire, model, extract, and state. Now, the real magic of this framework isn't just the steps themselves. It's how the framework actively prevents students from just jumping straight to a solution. Think about it. When we see a crisis, human nature just wants to fix it immediately, right? But this methodology forces them to pause, take a step back and rigorously map out the exact boundaries, the components, and the levers of the problem before they even think about proposing a fix. And it's iterative. That means they loop through these steps over and over, refining their understanding every single time until the big picture is perfectly clear.
Let's see this in Section 5, Dimes in Action, Heatwaves. What's really fascinating is seeing this methodology applied to a real-world crisis, like the extreme heat waves in Beijing. So in Step 1, students first describe the context. Imagine former rural villages in China that have been rapidly urbanized. We're talking about low-income, extremely densely packed informal settlements. Because of that crowded environment and just miles of hardened asphalt, they trap heat. It creates this unbearable urban heat island effect, which, as we know, is only getting worse every year with climate change. This incredibly detailed description gives the students their raw, initial narrative to work from.
Then we move to Step 2, Inquire. Here, students essentially become detectives, using the classic 5 Ws to flesh out the case. They figure out exactly who the stakeholders are, like local residents and city officials. They pinpoint what the impacts are. We're seeing severe adverse health effects and cripplingly high air conditioning costs. They isolate where it's happening most critically, which is inside residential homes and out on those unshaded asphalt streets. They narrow down when it peaks, specifically July and August. And finally, why? High building density and a severe lack of green space. By answering these questions so methodically, this messy, chaotic problem actually starts to take on a very clear, manageable shape.
Step 3 is to model the problem. Students build what's known as a process tree. It's essentially a visual map that breaks down that complex web of causes to figure out which subfunctions have the absolute most severe impact. By mapping out every single variable and connecting them all visually, the students in this case discovered something really interesting. They found that the subfunction of at-home staying carries the largest number of negative effects. When people are physically trapped inside these poorly ventilated homes during a massive heat wave, the health risks and the financial impacts just compound dramatically.
Next up is Step 4, Extract. This is where students hunt for leverage points. Think of these as the golden needles in the haystack, where one tiny intervention can yield a massive system-wide improvement. They filter their model using 4 very specific rules. They're looking for nodes that sit deep within the process, have a high overall effect score, don't require managing too many external elements, and sit early in the causal chain. This filtering process is absolutely crucial, folks. It ensures that whatever solution they eventually come up with won't just be a superficial band-aid. It's going to target the structural root of the crisis, maximizing the positive impact while keeping the effort required to actually do it as small as possible.
And that brings us to Step 5, State. This is where students synthesize all of that detective work into one targeted, actionable thesis. They take all the extracted data and clearly define the true scope of the crisis in a single, cohesive statement. They state exactly who is affected, what the core drivers are, like that building density and lack of vegetation, and the exact conditions that make the problem critical. Through these 5 steps, they've taken this chaotic, completely unsolvable, wicked problem and transformed it into a perfectly structured problem that is finally ready to be solved.
Let's look ahead in Section 6, AI and Future Cities.
Now, looking at the future, the researchers point out that generative AI can be integrated directly into the Dimes digital platform. It can basically act as a virtual teaching assistant. It evaluates step-by-step adherence and gives immediate text-based feedback to the students. And honestly, this is a real game changer. It allows student teams to check their work iteratively without having to wait for an instructor, which saves tons of valuable classroom time. It directly addresses those massive pedagogical hurdles we talked about earlier, lightening the load on educators who are trying to manage all this transdisciplinary data. But, and this is a very important but, AI does not replace human critical thinking. It doesn't replace the instructor. It's just there to scaffold the learning process and help guide students through the complex modeling.
Which leaves us with a truly fascinating frontier to ponder. As AI becomes an everyday tool, how is it going to fundamentally transform the foundational skills that our future urban scientists actually need? We are entering this wild new era where human ethics, systems thinking, and artificial intelligence all have to work perfectly in sync to design the cities of tomorrow. So, the next time you walk through your own city, I want you to ask yourself, are you just seeing buildings? Are you looking at a wicked problem just waiting to be structured?